Hey everybody, this is Bradley. Just want to say I hope you guys all are having a fabulous, wonderful day. And I am going to read this book, The Law and the Promise by Neville Goddard. If you guys haven't heard of this person, look him up. Chapter 1, The Law. Imaginating creates reality. Man is all imagination. God is man and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination that is God himself. Written by Blake. The purpose of the first portion of the book is to show you through actual true stories how imagining creates reality. Science progresses by way of hypotheses, tentatively tested and afterward accepted or rejected according to their facts or of experience. The claims that imagining creates reality needs no more consideration that is allowed by science. It proves itself in performance. The world in which we live in is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. For Blake wrote, Professor Morrison of the University of St. Andrews, the world originates in a divine activity identical with what we know ourselves as the activity of imagination. His task being to open the immortal eyes of man inward into the worlds of thought, into eternity, ever expanding in the bosom of God, the human imagination. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. The secret of imagining, writes Douglas Fawcett, is the greatest of all the problems and the solutions of which the mystics aspire. Supreme power, supreme wisdom, supreme delight lie in the far-off solution of this mystery. When man solves the mystery of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation, and that is, imagining creates reality. Therefore, the man who is aware of what he is imagining, knows what he is creating, realizes more and more that the drama of life is imaginal, not physical. All activity is at the bottom, imaginal. An awakened imagination works with a purpose. It creates and conserves the desired and transforms or destroys the undesirable. Divine imagination and human imagination are not two powers at all, rather one. The valid distinction which exists between the seemingly two lies not in the substance with which they operate, but in the degree of intensity of the operant power itself. Acting at the high tension, an imaginal act as an immediate objective fact. Keyed low, an imaginal act is realized in a time process. But whether imagination is keyed high or keyed low, it is the ultimate, essentially non-objective reality, from which objects are poured forth like sudden fancies. No object is independent of imagining on some kind of levels. Everything in the world owes its character to imagination on one of its various levels. Objective reality, writes Fitch, is solely produced through imagination. Objects seem so independent of our perception of them that we incline to forget that we owe their origins to imagination. The world in which we live is a world of imagination, and man, through his imaginal activities, creates the realities and the circumstances of life that he does either knowingly or unknowingly. Men pay too little attention to the priceless gift, the human imagination, and a gift is practically non-existent unless there is a conscious possession of it and a readiness to use it. All men possesses the power to create reality, but the power sleeps as though dead. When not consciously exercised, man live in the very heart of creation, the human imagination, yet are no wiser for what takes place therein. The future will not be fundamentally different from the imaginal activities of man. Therefore, the individual who can summon at will whatever imaginal activity he please, and to whom the vision of his imagination are as real as the forms of nature, is master of his fate. The future of the imaginal activity of man in its creative march. Imagining is the creative power not only of the poet, the artist, the actor, the orator, but of the scientist, the inventor, the merchant, and the artisan. Its abuse is unrestrained. Unlovely image-making is obvious, but its abuse is undue, Repression breeds a sterility which robs man of actual wealth of experience. Imagining novel solutions to even more complex problems is far more noble than to run from problems. Life is the continual solution of a continuously synthetic problem. Imagining creates events. The world, created out of man's imagining, compromises unnumbered warning beliefs. Therefore, there can never be a perfectly stable or static state. Today's events are bound to disturb yesterday's established order. Imaginative men and women invariably unsettle a pre-existing peace of mind. Do not bow before the dictate of facts and accept life on the basis of the world without. Assent the supremacy of your imaginal acts, your facts, and put all things in subjection to them. Hold fast to your ideal in your imagination. Nothing can take from you but your failure to persist in imagining the ideal realized, imagining only such states that are of value or promised well. To attempt to change circumstances before you change your imaginal activity is a struggle against the very nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an imaginal change. Everything you do, unaccompanied by an imaginal change, it is but futile readjustment of surfaces. Imagining the wish fulfilled brings about the union within that state, and during that new union, you behave in keeping with your imaginal change. This shows you that you are that an imaginal change will result in a change of behavior. However, your ordinary imaginal alterations as you pass from one state to another are not transformations, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whenever one state grows so stable as to become your constant mood, your habitual attitude, then that habitual state defines your character and is a true transformation. How do you do it? Self-abandonment. That is the secret. You must abandon yourself mentally to the wish fulfilled in your love for that state, and in so doing, live in the new state and no one in the old state. You cannot commit yourself to what you do not love, so the secret of self-commission is faith plus love. Faith is believing what is unbelievable. Commit yourself to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In faith that this act of self-commission will become a reality, and it must become a reality because imagining creates reality. Imagining is both conservative and transformative. It is conservative when it builds its world from images supplied by memory and the evidence of the senses. It is creatively transformative when its images things, when it imagines things as they ought to be, building as a world out of generous dreams of fancy. In the possession of images, the one that takes precedence, naturally, are those of the senses. Nevertheless, a present sense impressionally is only an image. It does not differ in nature from a memory image or from the image of a wish. What makes a present sense impression so objectively real is the individual's imaginations functioning in it and thinking from it, whereas in a memory image or a wish, the individual's imagination is not functioning in it and thinking from it, but it is functioning out of it and thinking of it. If you would enter in the image of your imagination, then would you know what it is to be creatively transformative? Then would you realize your wish? And then would you be happy? Every image can be embodied, but unless you, yourself, enter the image and think from it, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the wish to be realized by the mere passings of time, that which requires imaginative occupancy to produce its effect. Obviously, cannot be affected without such occupancy. You cannot be in one image and not suffer the consequences of not being in another image. Imagination is spiritual sensation. Enter the image of the wish fulfilled. Then give it sensory vividness and tones of reality by mentally acting as you would act when it would then mentally act as you would act were it at a physical fact. Now, this is what I mean by spiritual sensation. Imagine that you are holding a rose in your hand. Smell it. Do you detect the odor of the rose? Well, if the rose is not there, why is the fragrance in the air? Through spiritual sensation, and that is through imaginal sight, sound, scent, taste, and touch, you can give to the image sensory vividness. If you do this, all things will conspire to aid your harvesting, and upon reflection, you will see how subtle were the threads that led to your goal. You could never have devised the means which your imaginal activity employed to fulfill itself. If you long to escape from the present sense fixation to transform your present life into a dream of what might well be, you might imagine that you are already what you want to be, and to feel the way you would expect to feel under such circumstances, like the make-believe of a child who is remaking the world after its own heart. Create your world out of pure dreams of fancy. Mentally enter into your world dream. Mentally do what you would actually do, were it physically true. You will discover that dreams are realized not by the rich, but by the imaginative. Nothing stands between you and the fulfillment of your dreams but facts, and facts are the creation of imagining. If you change your imagining, you will change the facts. Man and his past are one continuous structure. This structure contains all the facts which have been conserved and still operate below the threshold of his surface mind. For him it is merely a history. For him it seems unalterable, a dead and firmly fixed past. But for itself it is a part of the living age. He cannot leave behind him the mistakes of the past, for nothing disappears. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists, and it gives and still gives its results. Man must go back in memory, seek for and destroy the cause of evil, however far back they lie. This going into the past of replaying a scene of the past in imagination as it ought to have been played the first time, I call revision, and revisions result in repeal. Changing your life means changing the past. The cause of any present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past. The past and the present from the whole structure of the man. They are carrying out all of the contents with it. Any alterations of contents will result in the alterations in the present and future. Live nobly so that mind can store a past well worthy of recall. Should you fail to do so, remember that first act of correction or cure is always revise. If the past is recreated in the present, so will the revised past be recreated in the present. Or else the claim, "Through your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow," is a lie, and it is no lie. The purpose of the story-to-story commentary that follows is to link up as briefly as possible the distant but disconnected themes of the 14 chapters into which I have divided the first part of this book. It will serve, I hope, as a thread of coherent thoughts that bind the whole into proof of its claim. Imagining creates reality. To make such a claim is easily done. To prove it in the existence of others is far sterner. To stir you to use the law constructively in your own life. That is the aim of this book.